Hey, this a for the wicked man them. For all the one them when me street woman. Sky the limit. Hey.
All right, we're about to get started momentarily. Get my headphones together.
So
we're gonna talk about this.
Abusing woman, you have to stop it. Take a life, living the family unhappy. Big man, I move sloppy. You force from the little daughter. Told that no right is a disaster. It's like say them forgot it. Say them come from a woman's body, but it seem like how the devil or them daddy do some things them never happy. But all your actions will be called for. Just remember time of the master. Hey. Them don't have no love. No love, them no feel. Them don't have no love. Them are dirty, them heart unclean. Hey, them don't have no love. No love, them no feel. Them don't have no love. Them not have no love for real. Where's Jasmine Dean? Hurt my heart when she go missing off the scene. Imagine the kind of pain her father feel. Worse with what she had to deal. The demons got no pray them, you reveal. Protect the innocent souls, I'm come for steal. The devil is real, like a thief in all the night, man for scene. Come for leave some scars were hard to heal. But this is my appeal. Protect us from the battlefield. Roll with me like a wheel, oh God. Them don't have no love. No love, them no feel. Them don't have no love. Them are dirty, them heart unclean. Hey, them don't have no love. No love, them no feel. Them don't have no love. Them not have no love for real. Hey, big man, tell me why you take her. Beat a raper, then they kill her than no nice. Like a GPS, find them location, they even put them on no ice. The consequence will ring them like a knife.
Turn this off.
Feed them evil deeds, they need to pay the price. They make them get away the once and do it twice. Them cannibal, they even deserve prison life. But me leave it to God through Jesus Christ. Yeah, them don't have no love. No love, them no feel. Them don't have no love. Them heart dirty, them heart unclean. Ay, them don't have no love. No love, them no feel.
All right.
Them don't have no love.
I think we're ready.
Them don't have no love for real. Hey.
All right, so welcome again to the Sean Show. Yours truly, Sean Garrity. Today we're talking some track and field, and with this track and field, the reason why I decided to do this one is because as I was going through several groups that talk about track and field, there was a discussion that Chris Taylor, Team Jamaica, 6th place from the last Olympics, that he should have been disqualified. And I was thinking to myself that this is something that I've seen before. This is something that happens over and over again in track and field. And there are those of us who see this type of situation on the track where one athlete goes from the left lane and goes to the right lane, the other athlete goes out, and then everybody goes crazy and says that the athlete needs to be disqualified because they drifted out too far, they stopped the other guy from passing them. And I mean, it just gets to a point where I believe that we just have to get this information out, because what's happening is it's a misunderstanding. And I think sometimes, people get caught up in a little bit too much, what I would say, nationalism, right? It gets too caught up with nationalism. And let me see something here. I just got to double check something real quick. Yeah. So they get too caught up in all that shenanigans, right? It becomes a national thing where, it's my guy, so you shouldn't push my guy out the way, or my guy didn't do anything wrong. But the key thing we have to look at is, were the rules violated? Has the rules been applied correctly, right? That is one of the things that we have to talk about. What rule, if any, did Chris Taylor violate, right? And I'm going to tell you this straight up. There was no rule violation, right? And I've seen some people saying that, Taylor cheated so he could win. And it was just like when Shauna Miller fell at the line. But there are those who said that she dove at the line, right? And let me tell you something. It does not matter if she fell or if she dove to the line, right? It really doesn't matter. I remember even Bershawn Jackson, when he was trying to make the USA Olympic team, I don't remember if he made it that year, what it was, World Champs year or not. I can't recall. But one thing that Batman did, because that's what he's affectionately called, Batman, what he did was he dove to the line, right? He literally went full flight to finish that 400-meter hurdle race. And he was not disqualified or anything like that. It's perfectly normal for you to fall at the line or dive at the finish line, because the key part is not your legs to get over the line. It's the part that we call the torso, right? So if you have to dive to the line, that final second, that smidgen of real estate that you have left to finish the race, and you dive, that is quite fine. So let's not get caught up in nationalism. Let's not get caught up in saying that this person cheated because it caused your athlete or your favorite athlete, your son or daughter, to lose the race. There were no violations, okay? That's the key thing you have to look at. But now let's look at some things that happened with Chris Taylor in his race. But before that, next week, Wednesday, we're going to be talking with Nicholas Powell, the Mind Game Consulting. He's going to be on the program talking about athletic psychology. You know, he's a psych guy, so he's going to be talking to us about that. He actually recently been appointed to Puma to work with some of the athletes in Jamaica, right? So we've got that coming up. So it's going to be pretty interesting. It's going to be pretty good next Wednesday at noon. So be sure to check that out. All right. But before we talk about Chris Taylor, before we talk about the rules and all that stuff, let's look at what happened with said Chris Taylor a couple years ago at the Carifta Games, right? In this particular race, right? In this particular race, Taylor is actually, he got the stick like way behind for Team Jamaica, about 30 meters behind, right? As you can see here, Trinidad is out, and he's not the worst athlete, right? So he's a pretty solid guy running for Trinidad, and Chris Taylor has a lot of real estate to cover. So here's Chris Taylor, right, as a youth chasing Trinidad. But one thing I want you to look at, right, before we get even to the curve of the race, right, I want to go back just a little bit and show you something, all right? Now, pay close attention to the Trinidad athlete. He's way to the outside of the lane, right? He's way to the outside of lane one. That is a strategy that the athletes use so that if you are coming from behind, you have a choice to make, because that inside barrier acts like a wall, right? It's like a wall because you can't go through it. You can't put your foot on it. You know, if you put your foot on it, you'll probably break your leg, okay? I've seen a leg broken from hitting that inside bar. And so that's his space to work with. So you now, if you're trying to pass him, you're going to have to go to the outside, okay? You're going to have to go to the outside to pass him, because what does he want to do? He wants to maintain his lead, and he doesn't want to make it easy for you. It doesn't mean he's impeding you, right? It doesn't mean the athlete is impeding you, right? The athlete is using up every bit of real estate to their advantage, all right? So as we continue the race, you'll see now he turns, he gets to the curve, he goes to the inside of the curve, again, to cut down the amount of space that he has to run, but he also opens up the outside lane for Taylor to make a move. But Taylor is now in lane 2, as you can see. And the Trinidad athlete is now back to the middle of lane 1. And then once he hits the straightaway, he's in lane 2. Now, there is no contact between him and Taylor. No contact. Now, let's continue. All right? But you see, Chris, some people said, because the guy went to the outside of the lane, it caused Chris to get tired and tie up. No, that's not why Chris got tired. Chris got tired because he just had too much real estate, too much grounds to make up on a fairly good athlete, right? So, and here's what happens. As Chris is coming down the straightaway, all that energy that he spent at the first part of the race begins to catch up to him because now he's all the way in lane 4 because the guy is moving to the outside. He's not touching him. He's not pulling him back because, as you can see, even at this point, Chris is a little bit ahead of him. But Chris was just spent, right? Chris is just spent at this point. So there we go. Race finishes. And the guy wins. He's in lane 3. Chris is in lane 4. Because once the stagger is broken, you can actually run in pretty much any lane. But the key fact is he did not stop Chris from passing him. He just gave him more ground to run. That's all that is. He never hit him. He never tried to grab his arm. He never pulled an elbow out to hit him in the throat or something, or to hit the stick out his hand. So that race was good. And what some people tend to do is they tend to not understand that once you're in the straightaway or once the stagger has been broken, you can move to the lane to the outside. You can move to the lane to the inside. Only on the curve is where you have a problem if you're supposed to be in the race, right? Where you're in the race. On the curve, you cannot step on the inside. And I think they recently updated the rule from 2 steps on the inside to 1 step. So now if you do 1 step, you should be disqualified if it's caught. Because again, it's a judgment call. But let's look at another thing, and this is why I brought that up too, because there's 2 things at play. Chris moved out his lane, just like the Trinidad athlete did. And 2, did he impede the athlete, which did not occur. Now let's look at this example now with Veronica Campbell-Brown from a couple of years before. So Veronica Campbell-Brown in Team Jamaica, lane 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, finishes the curve, right? And she's ahead of, I think this was a Britain girl or Panama. I don't remember. All right. So there you see VCB veering to the outside of the lane, but she's in the straightaway now. Some people are saying that slowed down the athlete behind her. She's not slowing down the athlete behind her. She has daylight. She has a whole bunch of daylight between her and the other athlete. And this is a major championship. And VCB was not disqualified because 1, she drifted to the outside lane, and 2, she did not come in contact with any athlete. And as you can see at this angle right here, VCB is to the right of the lane, the young lady is to the left of the lane. But there is no catching VCB at this point. So materially, VCB did nothing in the race to hamper, to hinder, to impede, or stop the other athlete. All right? Now, if anyone is supposed to be disqualified from the Millrose Games event, it would have been Donovan Brazier. Let's take a look at that race. All right? Let's take a quick look at that race. Brazier is in lane 5, and Vernon Norwood, I believe, is in lane 4, or is it the other way around? Yes, that's how it is. And Taylor is in the preferred lane, lane 6. That's what the Olympic finalists can do for you, being an Olympic finalist can do for you. So Taylor is here, and let me show you where Brazier should have or could have been disqualified, and it's right here. Because Brazier's foot is in that lane, right? It's okay to step on the line, right? You can step on the line, but you can't go over it, right? There's illustration in the USATF manual that I referenced, all right? I didn't get that picture up. I forgot to get a picture up. But you can see Brazier is the one who, before the cutoff, the cut point, because the cut point is where these orange cones are. So Taylor is slightly ahead of Norwood. Brazier is back there with a lane violation, but they probably didn't call it because they probably didn't see it. And he comes back over real quick, right? Now remember, Brazier's a half miler, so he's used to cutting in and knowing where to cut over. So that's no excuse for him to have messed up like that. But anyhow, they didn't call it. He didn't bump into anybody. He didn't win the race, all right? So there was no material gain from him stepping in that one time, right? But here we go. So in the 400 meters indoor, especially once you go on the track more than once, which is probably almost every race except the 200, you are going to fight for what is called the pole position. The pole position is the person who hits that first 200 meter first. Here we go. And this is where Taylor got very aggressive and took that inside, right? Now, even though Norwood, you could argue, could go slide in on the inside and try to pass him, the problem with the indoor curve is that it's so tight. You try to do that, you're going to run into problems. So here we go. So Taylor is here now going through. And if you notice, Taylor, even though he can't go right down to the inside of the curve, he still stays atop of the curve. Again, protecting the inside and giving Norwood more room to work. So as we continue this, you see Brazier trying to make a run, and Norwood responds to him, and they both go where? To the outside, because Chris feels them and he drifts to the outside of the lane just a little bit. That's something that we do. Now as we go, it's only 100 meters to go in the race, a quick turn, and Taylor drifts to the outside. Taylor's already on the outside of the lane 1, right? Keeping his people at bay. Brazier would have been better served if he just tucked in and went and just slid down to the inside, but he didn't. All right? So here we go now. As we come off the turn, you see Chris goes out. He does not touch Norwood. They do not make any contact. All right? And Taylor stays back in lane 2. He never went any further. He just said, you know what? I'm done. I'm going to stay in lane 2 and see how the chips finish, see how the chips fall. But if you can learn that there's two things. In track, you got this thing called distance and displacement. Displacement is the actual number of meters you run. Distance is an amount that you're supposed to run, right? So if you're supposed to run the 400 meters, you start at your line, you run in your lane, you run 400 meters. If you start in lane 2, you drift out into lane 8 and stay in lane 8 around this big second curve, you're going to be timed for a 400, but you probably just ran 420, which is your total displacement. So as the athlete goes down, and that is through the lane, that adds little distances here and there. So that's what is displacement. All right? So Taylor ends up coming through now and wins the race because what? He created that separation, he created that space, he took the pole position, and he created that space that he needed to ensure victory in the event. All right? That's what Taylor did. He did nothing wrong. Now, I had a meet official come in to break this down for us. All right? Let's listen to what Coach Span, where's Coach Span, had to say about it. Let's get rid of this. Here she goes. All right. So she's going to tell us her breakdown. She's an official. She has her own track and field management company going. Let's go.
In looking at last week's 400-meter race at the Millrose Games, many question why the young man Christian wasn't disqualified for veering out of his lane. You know, this is actually something we come across a lot in track and field. I currently run a meet management company in South Florida. We put on meets coming from the timing to the officiating. Full service crew is what we do. And we do come across these types of scenarios. And honestly speaking, what I can say in rewatching the video and seeing it live is that this is one of the pressures that officials have. Can't get away from it. I think in this case here, the reason nothing was called was strictly because he didn't impede anybody. He didn't keep anybody from passing him. He didn't touch anybody. He didn't hinder anyone else's race. So at that time, it becomes more of a judgment call. So it's one of those topics that, of course, are going to spawn very heated discussions, a lot of opinions. But I can say if he did veer and he was disqualified for this, we'd be having a different type of conversation right now and saying that it was unfair that this young man was disqualified in such an event. So again, you know, a lot of pressures, like I said, on the officials for making not making that call, but it is legal. And, you know, even in my own opinion, I don't think he did anything wrong. Again, he's not in one of those events where you stay in your lane for the complete race. This is one that you do break, and, you know, not impeding someone is big, and that will allow you to kind of veer out. So just my opinion.
And there you have it. You know, that's her opinion on what happened. But going from her opinion and some of the things that she saw from the video, just don't forget, guys, like and subscribe to the channel. We're going to be having a lot more content coming up. So just keep it locked in. Remember, next Wednesday, we're going to be talking to Nicholas Powell, the sports psychologist. But here's the competition rule, right? Here's the rule that we we have to be able to interpret, right? And it's in the USATF handbook, Rule 163, in the section called the competition, point number 4. And the question is, actually, what it reads is, any competitor or participant jostling, running across, or obstructing another competitor or participant so as to impede his or her progress shall be liable to disqualification in that event. The referee shall have the authority to order the race to be reheld, excluding the disqualified competitor, or, in the case of a heat, to permit any competitor seriously affected by jostling or obstruction other than the disqualified competitor to compete in a subsequent round of the race. Normally, such an athlete should have completed the event with a bona fide effort. Now, regardless of whether there has been disqualification, the referee in exceptional circumstances shall also have the authority to advance a competitor seriously affected by jostling or the obstruction, or order the race to be reheld if it is just and reasonable to do so. Okay? Those are some serious comments. But as you go down to point number 5, okay? And it says, in races run entirely in lanes, each competitor must keep in the allotted lane from start to finish. In races run partially in lanes, i.e. the indoor 400, each competitor must keep in the allotted lane from the start to the marked cut-in points. Unless a material advantage has been gained, a competitor shall not be disqualified if he or she is pushed or forced by another competitor to run out of lane. That is, somebody jostling and they push you. I think that happened with... there was a 1,500-meter race in the Olympics where can't remember the guy's name, but all I know is he pushed the other dude in the back when he was passing him, and it pushed him forward. Right, got a little bit of faster time. Runs out of the lane on the straightaway, or runs outside of the outer lane on the curve. Remember I said that earlier. If you run outside on the curve, that becomes a problem. Now, excluding the above exceptions, the referee shall disqualify a competitor if an umpire reports that the competitor has run out of the lane. So remember, Brazier was not called because Brazier was not seen by the officials. So if the official didn't see it, or if it's not called by the official, then there is no infraction. Again, with Brazier coming off that first curve, coming off that cut-in point, we see right here where Brazier, let me go back, right there, where Brazier is clearly in Vernon Norwood's lane. But the umpire didn't see it. The umpire can't call it. So the long and short of this is Taylor won that race fair and square. Taylor got his indoor time, 46:37 for the win. All right. Not the greatest time as a professional, but we'll take the win. A W is always good. All right. And, we want to see what else is going to come off the season. Any more lane violations or anything like that. But the point is, when you run the race like this, if an athlete drifts outside, it is quite fine. You don't have to stay in that one lane, right? I've seen many a times as a meet director myself where kids go out their lanes. And one of the things you learn is that you could finish pretty much in any lane so long as you're not impeding anyone. I.e., when we look back at the VCB race, right? If you look back at the VCB race, there she is, already drifting to the outside, and there she is, in the young lady's name to the outside of her, no disqualification, because she did not impede, she did not stop the girl. She actually created a wind draft for that young lady to run a little bit faster. I'm trying to make a joke here. So, family, Christopher Taylor won that race fair and square. If you have an issue with the rules, then you take it up with the people who provide the rules. All right? And remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Join me next week for Candid Conversation in the Sean Show. It's going to be live on Super Jams if you're in Palm Beach, and it's going to be right here on YouTube as well. If you're in the area, if you're online, you're not in the area, you can check it out online at the channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We appreciate everyone who logged in. Appreciate the thumbs up on the video. Big up yourself. Whomever that was, I didn't get to see it. My manager isn't here today, so it is what it is. But family, that's it. That's how Chris Taylor stole the men's 400 from the Millrose Games. you want to give him a big congratulations. It was a good meet. You know, the gentleman ran well, fair and square. Brazier ran a personal best in the indoor at 46.5 something. You know, congrats to him. Norwood, I think that was his season's best when I look back at the results. But Taylor did his thing. He came through, and he got the medal, he got the flowers, he got the checks to prove it. You know, and that's something I don't understand. How are you arguing with these officials who know more about the sport than you do? You can't argue with these people. They've either done the sport at various levels and now they're officiating because that's their contribution now to the sport. So please, when you see it happen, just suck it up. You know, don't worry about it. Just like it says in the song, suck it up, buttercup. Don't you worry about it. It's going to be fine. Okay? Now just remember, next Wednesday, February 9, Nicholas Powell, the sports psychologist from the Mind Game Consulting, he's going to be on the program. But that's pretty much it. We'll be back next week with some more right here on It's the Sean Show. We got some interesting stuff coming up in the coming weeks. Once we get that schedule set out, we'll send it out to you. Just remember to like and subscribe and share. All right, share the material. And as Sean Garrett is saying, have yourselves a great rest of the day.